The only real battle the Stoics taught isn't with the world. It's with the untamed territory within yourself. That inner wilderness where raw instinct for power, submission, connection collides with the person you think you should be. You feel it. A quiet chaos. Carl Jung gave this territory a name, the sexual shadow. But his solution wasn't denial. It was mastery. He challenged us to do what the Stoics championed, to face our own nature with reason, not with fear. Because here's the unbreakable rule. What you refuse to govern, governs you. The energy you exile doesn't die. It festers. It returns sideways, as obsession, as addiction, as the relationships that inexplicably crumble, and a silent, hollowing numbness that eats you from the inside out. So what is this shadow exactly? It's not some demon you were born with. Think of it more like a museum, a collection of all the judgments you've gathered over a lifetime. This is wrong, that desire is dirty, this part of me is dangerous. These are the labels you were taught to stick onto your own nature. And you got good at it. You locked those parts away in the cellar of your mind. But the Stoics knew a hard truth. Exiled energy never disappears. It doesn't die quietly in the dark. It festers. It transforms. And eventually, it starts to leak out. You find yourself lashing out at someone who innocently awakens something in you. You chase empty encounters because real intimacy, the kind that requires you to show up as a whole person, is terrifying. Or maybe you hate yourself for the fantasies that flicker in private, not realizing they're just echoes of an unmet need. And worst of all, in moments of connection, you feel nothing. A quiet static where a fire should be. You think you're broken. But Jung's diagnosis, echoed by the Stoics, is different. This isn't dysfunction, it's disconnection. Your rational mind is at war with your own nature. You aren't broken. You are simply divided. Carl Jung left us with a warning, one that echoes the coldest truths of Stoic philosophy. What you do not make conscious will come back as fate. Pause for a moment and really feel the gravity of that. Fate. A life scripted by the parts of you that you refuse to own. A path you walk, believing you're making choices, when you're actually being puppeteered by the ghosts in your own cellar. Why is this energy so potent? Because it's not just a fleeting urge. It's woven into your core identity. It's the longing to be alive, to connect, to express your rawest life force. When you suppress it, you aren't just denying a feeling. You are denying a piece of your very self. And we do it for a deeply human reason, to protect an image. That perfectly curated self-portrait, the reliable professional, the stable partner, the emotionally evolved individual. We build an inner citadel out of the bricks of denial, believing it keeps us safe. But the shadow doesn't always roar. Sometimes its most dangerous form is silence. A quiet so deep it becomes detachment. A disconnection so subtle you start to call it normal. You tell yourself it's just stress. Or worse, you call it maturity. A resigned acceptance that the fire has gone out. But in the language of the soul, this isn't maturity. It's grief. A deep, quiet grief for the parts of you that were never given a voice, never allowed a space to exist. It is the cry of an abandoned potential. So what is the path of the wise? The path of the brave? Jung didn't say the shadow is to be obeyed. This is the most critical distinction. He said it is to be known, to be seen, to be invited to the table for a conversation, not as an enemy, but as an ambassador from a forgotten land within you. The ultimate goal isn't to indulge chaos. It is to achieve sovereignty. This dialogue is about understanding. Where does this impulse come from? What is it trying to tell me? What part of me is it trying to awaken? This is where Stoicism and depth psychology meet. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. True strength isn't found in pretending you have no darkness. It's found in having the courage to look it squarely in the face, unflinching. So where exactly does this shadow originate? It's not a flaw in your design. Think of it as a survival strategy. When you were a child, your young mind learned to do what was necessary to belong. Anything that felt unsafe, unaccepted, or wrong, especially powerful natural instincts, got packed up and shoved into the basement of the unconscious. It was an act of self-preservation. But a child's survival strategy becomes an adult's prison. That buried energy doesn't decay, it distorts. It warps into nameless fear, into compulsion, and most powerfully, it returns as projection. This is where things get tricky, but it's also where we get a chance to exercise real self-mastery. The psyche, in its desperate attempt to become whole, starts to play movies on the people around you. You think you're watching them, but you're actually watching a film about yourself. Think about that person you can't stop thinking about, the one you both desire and resent. Or the person you judge so harshly for being too loud, too free, too indulgent. Why do they stir up so much in you? That is the trap of projection. You're wrestling with your own disowned parts through them. You think it's about them. You think you need to fix them or avoid them. But this is a trick the mind plays to avoid looking in the mirror. Carl Jung gave us the key to unlock this cage. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." For a Stoic practitioner, this isn't just a nice quote. It's an instruction manual. It transforms every annoyance, every judgment, every obsession into an opportunity for self-awareness. The next time someone gets under your skin, whether with admiration, envy, or contempt, pause. Instead of reacting, ask a rational question. What are they expressing that I have suppressed? Is it their freedom, their confidence, their vulnerability, their ability to experience pleasure without guilt? Whatever it is, know this: it's yours too. It's just been living in exile in your shadow, and recognizing that is the first step to calling it back home. We've talked about being divided. Now let's look at the true cost of that silent inner civil war. Suppression, in Stoic philosophy, is never the path to virtue. It doesn't create a strong person. It creates a fragmented one. You become two people living in the same body. There's the version of you for the world. Calm, rational, professional. You answer the emails, you sit in the meetings, you smile at the right times. You are a master actor in the play of everyday life. And then there's the other one. The one that exists at midnight in the endless scroll, in the fantasies you won't admit to, in the chaos of your conflicting emotions. One person lives by a script, the other longs to burn it all down. You call this being complex. In reality, it's a symptom. And make no mistake, maintaining these two selves is a full-time job. It is exhausting. Most people aren't tired from their jobs. They are tired from the invisible weight of constantly suppressing themselves. The relentless effort it takes to look appropriate, feel appropriate, and desire appropriately. It drains the soul of its vitality. You are spending half your energy just keeping the other half in chains. Jung has a perfect quote for this. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. But he also says that on the other side of that door is wholeness. Because where your wounds live is precisely where your life force is trapped. And this fragmentation, it doesn't stay neatly contained inside you. It leaks. It seeps into the most sacred ground, your relationships. Here's the brutal truth. The sexual shadow destroys love not with loud arguments or betrayal. It destroys love with something far more subtle and lethal: vacancy. You can be sitting right next to your partner, but your mind is 1,000 miles away. You can touch them, but it's a touch without presence, a mechanical act. You are physically present, but emotionally absent. You are a beautiful house with nobody home. And your partner, they feel it. They can't name it, but they feel the chill in the space between you. They feel your absence. And the most tragic part? They start to think it's their fault. Maybe I'm not attractive enough. Maybe I did something wrong. They torture themselves trying to fill a void that isn't theirs to fill. They are standing in the presence of someone who has not yet faced themselves. And so love, which was once a fire, slowly becomes maintenance. You manage a life together like colleagues managing a project. You call it stability. You call it maturity. But your soul knows the truth. It's a surrender. A Stoic practitioner knows that no true relationship can be built on a foundation of dishonesty, especially dishonesty with oneself. You cannot connect with another soul if you are still afraid of your own. The devastation doesn't stop there, because sexual energy, in the Jungian sense, is not just about the physical. It is symbolic of your raw, primary creative energy. It is your élan vital, your life force, the drive that pushes you to create, to build, and to make your mark on the world. When you block this current at its root, you don't just block desire. You block everything. You find yourself procrastinating on the projects that matter. You overthink simple decisions until they become paralyzing. You use distraction to numb the feeling of emptiness. You live in a rich fantasy world but find yourself unable to act in the real one. It all feels logical. You have good reasons for your inertia. But look deeper. It's not reason. It's resistance. You are resisting the very life that is trying to flow through you. You call it burnout. You call it fatigue. Jung called it by its more accurate name, disintegration. You're not just tired. You are being dismantled by your own refusal to feel. You are slowly disappearing from your own life, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize your own eyes. Your voice sounds like a stranger's, and you stop expecting anything extraordinary to happen. And here is the hardest part to accept. You are not alone in this fight, but the system around you is not on your side. We live in a strange cultural paradox. A world that is both hypersexualized and emotionally sterile. Sex is everywhere, to sell cars, to drive clicks, to build personal brands. We talk about it publicly, yet we whisper about our real desires in silence. We can watch the most graphic images, yet we fear the nakedness of a truly honest conversation. Why this contradiction? Because a society that runs on consumption and distraction does not want you to be whole. It wants you to be confused. A person disconnected from their inner world is easier to manipulate, easier to sell a quick fix to, easier to convince that happiness lies in the next product, the next relationship, the next distraction. Your shadow becomes a profitable gold mine for others, and you stay stuck, half awake, half alive. But Jung, like the Stoics, did not offer despair. They offered confrontation. They gave you the key to the prison. Facing your shadow isn't just about healing trauma. It is about reclaiming your sovereignty. Because when you truly know what moves you deep down, you can no longer be controlled by the hollow promises of the outside world. You stop chasing empty validation. You stop settling for lifeless intimacy. You stop shrinking your desires to make others comfortable. You start living a life that is yours. But you must be willing to go through the fire. So what is the path forward? This isn't about fixing something that's broken. This is an act of will. It's about reclaiming your sovereignty, no longer being controlled by the judgments of others or the ghosts within. This is the beginning of true transformation. And here is a truth the Stoics understood deeply. Wholeness is not perfection. Perfection is an illusion. Wholeness is the raw truth. It is the courage to hold both, the rational and the instinctual, the light and the shadow. It isn't about eliminating the darkness. It's about learning to live with wisdom and with mastery. Ultimately, it all comes down to a single choice. A choice you make every single day, in every moment. It is the choice between performance and presence, between numbness and vitality, between a life lived from the surface and a life lived from the soul. Remember, your sexual shadow is not an enemy hunting you. It is an exiled part of you, calling you home. It is trapped life force, waiting to be liberated and integrated. Face it now while it's still a whisper, before it has to roar to be heard, before it returns as the fate you cannot escape. This journey begins with a single, brutally honest question you must ask yourself in the quiet. What part of your desire have you buried? And what has it truly cost you to keep it hidden? Stop running from yourself. It's time to return.